Hello folks, this is Quentin from ServiceNow. Here I want to demystify the role of Data Steward in ServiceNow Workflow Data Fabric, specifically in the zero copy connector that you configure. So if you have been playing with our zero copy connector connectivities, this is an out of the box plug and play feature in ServiceNow that we released in June, where you can connect ServiceNow to data platforms such as Databricks and Snowflakes. That capability, and others, right? That capability comes with specific access management. And this is something that when I was playing with zero copy, I didn't really know and I didn't really understand how this worked. So I wanted to, I played with it and I'm just replaying back to you. So you don't waste time trying to figure out specifically the data steward role. So I'm here in Workflow Data Fabric Hub. I've established some connection as an admin on my demo instance. I have the admin role. I created a connectivity to my Databricks, and then I've mapped a few tables. I think I created a bunch of data fabric table here in data asset. So now we have the table that I already created. That's all good, but this is working when you are admin. You can play with zero copy, list the information from table. Here I've mapped a table from Databricks to ServiceNow. So I created a data fabric table here. I can open list, and you'll see where I'm going with this. I'm opening that new data fabric helpdesk survey list that's coming from Databricks. You can see the record. There's not much record. It's just a test use case here. So that's coming directly from Databricks. You'll see I have access to the table, and I didn't need to go in access control or anything. Well, this is because I'm admin. I have the admin role on my user account on my demo instance. Obviously, when you go a little bit deeper and more closer to a real world environment, production, like, you're gonna want to do things a bit differently. So here we have access control, and there's a bunch of explanation about the access control here. You can read, and we talk about the data steward. It's a new role in ServiceNow. We never really had this type of persona at ServiceNow, and now we have it there. It's described here. We also have a documentation here. If you look at the Workflow Data Fabric Hub documentation, Zurich or Yokohama release, you'll see managing zero copy connection in Workflow Data Fabric Hub. So we explain what I'm going to explain, but with more detail, because even with that documentation, I was a bit lost. That's why I'm making that video. When you click on Manage Access, you will see that there is nothing here. If you follow the doc, they say depending on your use case, you need to create a custom role. So that's what you have to do. So first of all, what that data steward role is gonna give you, once you figure out how to create the role and click here and select it here, the people with that role, the users with that role, will have access to manage the connection. So we'll have access to establish connection and do the table mapping in zero copy, create new data fabric table from that connection. So, but you'll see there is more to it. I'll keep it for now. Let's focus on the role first and do some testing together. So in ServiceNow, I went to the sys underscore user underscore role table, and I created a new role for my particular use case, right? Because I want to create a role where I'm gonna grant that role to a set of people who's only gonna have access to that Databricks connection in Workflow Data Fabric. So I created this new role, like from scratch. I went there and clicked new role, and that's about it, right? You can put a description. I'm gonna say data steward role for DBX Quentin's environment. If I want to be specific, so we can track this down. Where was that? Right here. Okay, so I can track it back. I know. So if I pull people in that, if I grant that role to some people, if I'm doing something correctly, they will have access to manage that established connection. They will be able to create connection, a new Data Fabric table from that connection. So doing this is not enough. First, I'm going to save it. In order for that role to be visible here in that manage access view, you need to inherit the role or apply the out-of-the-box Data Steward role here. If I look for DF, there is Data Steward role here. And you apply that role in there. So that normally suffices to be able to see that particular Data Steward role in there. So I'm gonna go and see. I'm refreshing the screen because I think last time I had to do that. I'm going back to access control. And now I can see it. So I can see in save change. Now you can tell me, okay, that's great. You created the Data Steward role. You gave that role the role of the out-of-the-box role, Data Fabric, Data Steward role, and you set that permission there. All right, so now let's test it. There is something I've learned doing this. So I created a user. So I'm gonna go in the user table. So in order to do so, I'm gonna just show you the user I created here. I have a Data Steward survey user here, just for testing, and I just want to apply the role for that user, the particular role that I created a minute ago. So I know he has DBX in the name, so I'm applying that particular role. All right, so now I can close all the tab or whatever we want to do, and I'm gonna, or maybe impersonate. I should do impersonate to that Data Steward role that I created, and see what type of access I do have. I'm gonna close all the tab. All right, and do that. Oh, see, I don't see the workflow Data Fabric hub here, because I think I know what I've done wrong. I have a custom role. I have assigned the Data Fabric Data Steward role to that custom role, and I believe I've assigned that user to that custom role. So let's double check everything. So I'm gonna go on that user. Let's look up that user. It's this user here, generic user I created. And I'm gonna search for the role I assigned. Obviously I didn't assign the, I'm pretty sure I did assign it, but I forgot, so okay. That's a role you need to assign. That's my custom role for my particular use case, right? So click, and if I save this time, it should work. Perfect. Role is there, right? That's my custom role. Let's review it. So it's in the recording. That custom role is called Data Steward DBX CSAT Help Desk Survey. That's for one of the use cases I'm working on. Let's impersonate back now to the Data Steward persona. So now I see it. So I can only see that established connection because I was given, as admin, I given that the Data Steward role only on that Data Fabric connection. Remember, I had some established connection with BigQuery and other system, but yeah, I'm only given access to this. So now let's see if I can click on this. What can I do? I can see the existing data asset. And I'm not admin at all with that user. That's a kind of a default user I created, blank user. only with that particular role. I can review the field mapping. So, okay, great. Let's try to, let's click exit. Let's try to create a new data fabric table. If you do nothing, like I've done, because I've used that user before, I'll explain to you some things to remember. If let's say I want to create a new table from that Databricks table here, I'm gonna do this and try. That user I'm using needs to have permission in the specific scope is working from. So let's say test Quentin. If I click continue, let's say I'm doing the mapping. I'm not gonna go slow on that part. This is normal zero copy usage. I want to double click into the particular permission, right? So here I'm just gonna say part ID is my primary key, all good. Now you get a message. And that's what I wanted to show you. Failed to create the data fabric table with error. It's not explained in the documentation. If you go in that part of the documentation when they talk about the role, but it makes sense. Here you're gonna be creating data fabric table, but you need specific permission on the application scope, right? So this is very important. If you do your testing as admin, yes, everything's gonna work, but by default here it's kind of secured. So if we go back as admin, I can give delegated permission to that user, so he can create a new data fabric table. But before I do that, I wanted to see if I was able to list record. I think I'm gonna be able to see the list, or not even, because I don't have access to that table. The SEL that's controlling that particular table is not giving me access to it, so we respect the security model of ServiceNow. So being a data steward doesn't mean you have access to the underlying data and the table in ServiceNow. That's something I wanted to highlight. So a few things you need to do. When you're working on a use case with zero copy, you can create an application scope. Then you define who are the user who's going to be creating table in that application scope. You give those users the delegated development role, so they can create table in that particular application scope. Basically, you want to make sure they have permission on the application scope. So if I go and try to do it, so it's in the recording, I'm just going to try to do it with you. If I go as admin, if I put .list, and I search for my data, my specific data steward I created. Now I can edit the role and add the delegated developer role. I'm cheating a little bit because on that application scope, I already gave the permission for that user and on that scope, and I gave I modified via Studio, I think it was via Studio, the application scope, so delegated developer can modify it. So let's see if it's enough. So I'm adding some voiceover here. Yeah, I was just showing how to add the delegated developer role to my particular data steward. And then obviously on the application scope, on the scope app, you need to give that data steward the permission to modify things within that scope. So that's what I'm going to be showing you in the next step in case you're not familiar with Studio. Mine, I called it CSAT. And then I'd click Edit with Studio. And then I went to that three little dot, add collaborator, and I added my user Data Steward as a collaborator on that scope tab. So it's gonna, you can probably have more, give specific granular permissions, so you can only create table in that scope, add table object. I'm getting a broader set of permission with editor. I'm not expert in the studio part, but this I know and work for me. So I give the editor on that scope, and that's it. This is, now I can change scope. I'm gonna do it as a developer. First, I'm gonna impersonate. So I just need to remember how I need to remember the name. That has to be this one. That's just the scope I created for that use case. So I'm still with my Data Steward. I'm going to go in establish connection, click on that data brick. I'm Data Steward for this one, and now I'm going to try to create that table again. Map. Select my primary key. And now it's working. So I didn't show all the steps, but creating the application scope and having permission as a delegated developer on that application scope. So when the Data Steward is trying to do things from that established connection, you can write the table object in that scope, which makes sense. And then there's obviously the permission. If I do an open list, the permission also are honored on the table. So you can modify the SEL very much like you do with any local table. So here I'm gonna have permission. I'm a developer for that scope. I created that table. Actually, I'm not sure if I go in that one. That table was created on a different scope. I don't know if I'm gonna have access to it. I'm just gonna try. I believe this one, I don't have access to it, right? Because this one, I didn't create this help desk survey in the scope, in the custom scope I created for this. This one is actually in global. I did nothing to give permission to my particular Data Steward, so it doesn't. My Data Steward here doesn't have access to it. So this one, obviously, I have access to it because, of course, I'm a delegated developer on that particular scope. I'm a Data Steward, so I'm given the permission to create the table. And since I'm creating the table, I automatically have the permission to list to list what's in the table. So just wanted to highlight this. Hopefully, it makes sense. It took me a while to understand how the Data Steward role was working and what I could do with the Data Steward role. So it's really giving visibility to a particular established connection. All right, so an admin will establish the connection with a data platform, and then you want a Data Steward to be able to kind of do the table mapping, the field, create the data fabric table. But just remember about the scope tab. Remember that you need to create a custom role and assign the Data Steward role to it, and then put your user in that custom role. And this piece is kind of documented, but in the doc we don't talk about the rest of the stuff I've covered. So I hope that's helpful. I'm going to publish this in a few minutes.